And I'm like, oh crap, I got an at-home wife, two young children staring at me, and they're like, what are you going to do now?
Are you ready for an incredible tale of ups and downs and a bunch of happy accidents in between?
I don't, I don't know, but let me go have coffee with this guy. And I reached out to him and he said, yeah, I'll give you 15 minutes. And so I met him for a coffee, and that 15 minutes turned into a 4 hour meeting. And at the end of the 4 hour meeting, you want to talk about timing.
Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons that we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster ride of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents Podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure.
Michael Pedersen is a former elite athlete who has successfully launched two different seven-figure online businesses. He's now a peak performance coach and business strategist who specializes in helping business owners, entrepreneurs, and coaches achieve personal and professional growth. He excels in working specifically with men over 50. He's authored two books, Dominate Your Market and Atomic Actions. And in his free time, he enjoys hiking, working out, and traveling. Michael Pedersen, welcome to the Happy Accidents podcast.
Dennis, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very, very excited to share my wild ride that I've lived so far.
Yeah, this should be a fun episode of the podcast because you and I've chatted a few times over the last couple of years. I've gotten to know you. I've gotten to hear, different bits and pieces of your story, but I'm excited for you to just lay it all out here for the audience today. As I mentioned in the intro, you've successfully launched two different seven-figure online businesses, and we're going to jump into that eventually. But as with every single podcast episode, every story that I share here, I like to take it back to the beginning so people can understand your journey and the different serendipitous events and moments that have played a part along the way. So let's go back to your background. I'm going to take it back to, your young 20s. You went to Oregon State University, correct?
Yes, Oregon State Beaver, go Beavs.
Nice. So while you were there, you were in you did a Bachelor of Science, I believe, in the Sports and Exercise Applied Science program,
Yes.
right? And you were there on a full scholarship, correct?
Yeah, for track and field.
Yeah. So to, leading in, how did that happen? How did you get into track and field? How did you end up at Oregon State?
Oh, well, gosh. I mean, my brother was a national champion track athlete in high school. And he was 6'2", 245 pounds. I was 6', 170 pounds. So I was always his shadow and I always
Right,
wanted to be him. And because
right.
everything he touched turned to gold. I mean, this guy was just one of the best athletes I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so
Wow.
we hung out all day, every day. And so I got to hang out with a phenomenal athlete, which brought me way up very quickly. So
Yeah.
my maturity grade for grade was way beyond my current grade because of him. And then he got a full ride scholarship throwing the javelin to University of Washington up in Seattle. And he won the state championship track meet. He won the national championship track meet. And the very next year, I blew up my back, but still got third in the state meet, was ranked number 6 in the country for javelin that year, and then took a full ride scholarship to Oregon State that following year.
Wow.
And that's kind of how the track came about.
Yeah. Having an older sibling that you're looking up to and almost competing with to try and stay at their level really does force you to kind of accelerate your own growth, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Through my whole childhood, his friends became my friends, and
Mm,
so it was really funny. Not really funny for me, but when he left high school and graduated, and I was a senior, all my friends left because all my friends were his friends.
right.
And so that senior year, all I had was a girlfriend that had all the way through high school, and all the guys sort of had a chip on their shoulder with me, and they're like, "Well, how you doing now, Michael?" Like, I'm
Right.
like, "Oh shit!"
Your
So
posse's gone. Yeah.
my
So your
posse's
brother,
gone.
is he 1 year older than you?
10 months older than me. Yes, 10 months.
Okay, so yeah, so close in age, close enough that you're not this annoying little brother, right? It's
Mm-mm.
not like you were 4 or 5 years younger than him. Close enough in age that you can hang out and it makes sense, but him just being far enough ahead of you that you're always pushing yourself a little more to try a little harder to be a little bit better.
Yeah, I think his physical stature. I mean, he was 6'2", 190 as an eighth grader. He was
Wow.
massive. He was a man in the eighth grade.
Right.
My mom had to carry his birth certificate to every athletic event because the mothers saw my brother coming, and my mom would go, "Here you
Right.
go, here," and they're like, "No way, there's no
Right.
way." He was massive. So
Yeah.
his physical stature, but he was super fast runner, had a phenomenal arm. He was just a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he really
Yeah.
was. He was sort of like a Bo Jackson type. He was that. He
Right.
was that good.
Right. So then you not having that same stature, I mean, 6 feet
Mhm.
is not short, but you're not 6 foot, whatever your brother was, and 200 and something pounds like your brother was. You had to make up for that through really working yourself and pushing yourself. You didn't have the natural size that you could rely on.
Yeah, I started lifting weights at the age of 11. And back then, I'm 60 years old now. So back then, nobody lifted weights. Period. Everybody thought weights would be bad for your athletics, would
Mm,
hurt your athletics. And I got tired of waking up looking at this massive brother of mine. And I'm like, okay, the only thing I can do, I guess, is lift weights. And my stepdad bought me a 110-pound weight set from J.C. Penney's. I'll never forget it. And he stuck it down in the basement. He said, "Do what you want to do." And I would work out 2 hours a day, 6 days a week at the age of 11.
wow.
And within 2 years, I put on 30 pounds of muscle. And I was pretty tall too, actually. In the eighth grade, I was 5'10". And back now, 5'10" is nothing in the eighth grade. I
Right.
think I think the milk the kids drink now has lots of stuff in it. But I was 5'10", 130 pounds. And
Right.
then the next year, I was 5'10", 155 pounds. And then
Mm,
the year after that, 6 foot, 175 pounds. So I
right.
put on like 35 pounds of muscle in about 2.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you know what you're doing? Like, obviously, an 11-year-old working out, you could hurt yourself if you have, improper form, don't know what you're doing. You must have had some sort of guidance, I'm assuming.
I had a bodybuilding book, and anybody who knows bodybuilding will know this name, Franco Colombo. I'll never forget it. I did not know at the time he was like 5'2" tall. He was
Wow.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's training partner in Venice Beach, California.
Right.
I saw his body and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's body was unbelievable. Like the
Yeah.
muscles, and he had a book. He had a book, and you could probably Google it and find Franco Colombo fitness weightlifting book. And I would just open it up and I would see what to do for my arms, for my shoulders, for my legs. And that's all I did for 2 straight years.
Wow. So, and javelin was your main event in track and field, or?
No, I started out as a jumper, a long jumper and triple jumper and a high jumper in junior high school. I was fortunate enough to, I broke the national record as an eighth grader in the high jump, long jump, and triple jump, all of them.
Wow.
So I came into high school, picked to be the top in the state in Oregon for all three of those. Yeah, if anybody knew the events, it was really crazy how far I jumped. I jumped
Mm,
almost 22 feet in the long jump as a freshman in high school, and I triple jumped 45 feet. And that's really, really very, very far, very, very far. And then as
yeah.
a sophomore, my brother, I kept watching him throw the javelin. And I kept seeing that thing go way out there. And to my track coach's dismay, one day I just walked up to my brother and said, "Teach me how to throw this thing." And the javelin's 8 foot long. It's very long, very long. And I threw it the first time and it did a 360 spin and all of that. And I'm like, ah. And he goes, no, you throw it through the point, you throw it like this. And in the first meet, I was ranked second in the district after the first time I ever threw it, behind my brother. And that just changed the whole scope of everything. So I stayed as a jumper all the way through high school and was ranked in the top, probably the top 10 in the state in long jump and triple jump all the way through the years. But I picked up the javelin and never looked back. It was like love at first sight for sure.
Right. So then Oregon State, when you got the full scholarship, track scholarship to go there, was it specifically for javelin? Was it
Javelin.
just, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you head off to Oregon State, you're on the scholarship, you're there for track and field. What was that experience like? Because suddenly you're not with other high school kids, you're with bigger, stronger kids in university.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting because I picked Oregon State because there was a really good javelin thrower there that was about my size. So he wasn't very big. He was a little taller than me. He was like 6'2", but like 175 pounds, but he was ranked top 5 in the nation for the javelin. And I'm like, I want to train with that guy. And I just shadowed him. And as a freshman, I broke the all-time freshman javelin record at Oregon State. Qualified for the NCAA challenge or championships, all based on training with him and busting my butt. And then as a sophomore, I was picked to be an NCAA All-American, and I blew out my knee. And then it was so bad that there's 4 ligaments that hold your knee together, and I tore 3 out of 4 completely off the bone, ripped them right off the bone. And the orthopedic doctor said, I'll never throw again. My career is over. It's done. And, you know, I was at full ride scholarship and I was picked to be an NCAA All-American. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you told me the wrong thing. And I kind of flipped him the middle bird and rehabbed the crap out of it. And the very next year I threw again, qualified for the Pac-10 championships, qualified for the NCAA championships, and then ended up doing the decathlon for Canada for 1 year after all of that. So kind of, you know, one of those defining moments where you've got a professional, the orthopedic doctor for Oregon State, who did a stress test on my knee and it just went everywhere. Like it literally went everywhere. And he said, you're never going to ever compete again. And wow. I'm that guy that tell me what I can't do and let's rock and roll with it. And that's what I did.
He obviously underestimated your mindset and your determination. So I have to ask though, so your plan going into university was what? Like you would come out and be a personal trainer? Were you planning to have a career in athletics? Like what was your thought process at that time?
Truth be told, I went to Oregon State on a full-ride scholarship. That was my paid job, right? Full-ride scholarship. I went there completely for sports, to the point where the first semester I had a 1.87 GPA, and the coach pulled me into his office and said, you're going to lose your scholarship unless you pull your head out of your ass. And of course I did. And, you know, I bumped it up to like a 2.7 and then a 3-point. And I think I graduated with like just under a 3-point after, you know, throughout all my years. But near the end, of course, you got to start thinking job. And I wasn't thinking personal training, but I was definitely thinking something in the exercise science field, almost maybe biomechanics. I loved biomechanics. Because I knew the javelin, I knew what every joint did through the entire throw. I mean, to the fingers, to the wrist, to the elbow, everything. I studied it. So that was really fascinating to me. So that's what I was going to do. And then when I didn't make the Olympic team for Canada in 1988, but my teammate got the bronze that year. So Dave Steen, anybody who knows Canadian track and field, Dave Steen, he was my training partner, got the bronze that year in the 88 games, which was incredible to know that I trained with that guy. And then when I got out, I thought, okay, what do I do now? And I wanted to make some money. And it just sort of made sense I thought, well, personal training, I don't know what that is, but you know, I'm a pretty motivating guy. I'm in pretty good shape. I was doing a little bit of fitness modeling at the time. I did a couple of fitness infomercials that were seen all over the world. And I thought, well, I guess I'll be a trainer. And that I dove into the personal training field.
Yeah. So I just want to back up for a second. So you grew up in Canada. It was British Columbia, correct? Where
born in British Columbia, but my dad moved us to Oregon when I was 4. So I've lived in the States basically all my life.
Right. So you were a Canadian citizen, and that's why you were going for the Canadian Olympic team.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So you graduate. You're like, now I got to figure out what to do. I did my Bachelor of Science in athletics. Seems like being a personal trainer sounds like a good idea. How did you go about trying to figure out how to do that? Did you try and get on with some sort of team? Did you try and carve out your own niche? How did this happen?
I got back to Oregon after all of that and didn't want to sit still for one day. I was like, I got to go get a job, make some money. And this Gold's Gym opened up in downtown Portland, Gold's Gym. And I thought, well, God, that's fitness. It's a gym. Let me go walk in there and see what's going on in there. And they said, yeah, we're looking for trainers. And I told them my background. They're like, holy smokes, geez, they almost made, they looked at my background athletically and just said, you're hired. They hired me. But what I didn't like about it was they took a 50% cut, like most gyms. And so I lasted about 4 months and met a really good friend of mine who was training people privately in the home. And I was like, what are you doing? What is that? And he goes, my rate is much higher than the gym. I work for myself. It's my own business. And I train people privately in the home that don't want to go into a public gym. And I go, I want to do that. And I kind of watched what he did. And then I created a partnership, a referral partnership with a home fitness equipment company locally. And some wealthy people were coming in there buying home equipment. They would give them my name. And I would go into their home and do like this free consultation, show them how the machine worked and all that. And then I had a brochure that I made up and I would leave it with them. And the second home I went to was a pretty well-known male CEO in Portland. I'd known his name even. I was like, oh crap, I'm in this guy's house. Man, that's crazy. Like back then it was like a $5 million home. And that was in the late 80s. So that's probably $20 million home now. And for some reason, he liked me. And he said, well, can you come in and help me? And I said, absolutely. And I took my rate and quadrupled it from the gym. I 4x'd it from the gym. And I was charging a little over $100 an hour back in the 80s. And even today in personal training, that's a very high rate. But I knew I was charging very affluent people. And I knew that they valued their health enough to where they wouldn't take me serious unless I charged a really high rate. So that was the first time in business that I ever got out of my comfort zone. Was I thought, gosh, what do I charge? And I just said, screw it, I'm going to go $100 an hour. And I threw it out there and he took it. And I was training him 3 times a week for about a year, just about a year.
Wow. So this is quite the journey already, because you're coming out of university going, what the heck do I do now? Hey, personal training sounds like a good thing. You get into a gym, you like what you're doing, but you don't like the economics of it.
Right.
You just stumble across a friend of yours who's doing it in the home. I didn't even know that was an option. Let me try that. Next thing you know, you've got, a pretty affluent CEO looking for your services. I mean, with your background and your pedigree, even though you're young at the time, you've got the background to back this up.
Yep.
You throw a number out there that you're a little nervous about, it gets accepted, boom, you've now got a in-home personal training business on the go. How were you learning what to do next? Like you said, you created a partnership, you came up with a flyer, where were you getting some of these ideas on how to promote yourself and grow your business?
Well, I've been a marketing junkie since I was a young boy, actually, just driving around and seeing, new businesses start up in my little town of 9,000, Newburgh, Oregon. And I would notice them and I would pay attention to them, and I would look at the name of the building. This is like 10 or 11 years old. And I'd look at the name and I go, that's a stupid name. I don't need, what is that name? And I would ask my mom and she wouldn't know. She would be like, Michael, I don't know what you're talking about. And so what I just did is I started buying marketing books and how to market your I remember one book was how to market your services. And I thought, well, personal training is a service. It wasn't a fitness marketing book, but it was how to market your services. And then I bought a book on how to market to the affluent. Then I found a personal trainer in Los Angeles. I was in Oregon, who was charging the same rate I was, but he was booked solid training 12 clients a day at $100 an hour. So he was making a lot of money. And I flew out to LA and consulted with him for a day. I paid him back then, I think it was $1,000 to consult with him for the day. Because I wanted to know what this guy's doing. And I picked up a few nuggets, came back to Oregon, and then that one client turned into, I was training 5 male CEOs in their homes within the first 6 months. So I took it, I created a 6-figure business back then when personal trainers, the average annual salary for a trainer, $20,000 maybe back then, something like that. And I was, I cracked the $100,000 mark within 6 months.
Wow. So on the Happy Accidents podcast, or in the Happy Accidents newsletter, this is the part of the story I refer to as increasing your luck surface area. You're setting the stage. You're getting out there. It's obviously it's in your blood. You've got this tenacious, persevering attitude. I don't know how to be a personal trainer, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find some people to learn from. I'm going to read some books. I'm going to go and hire somebody to let me pick their brain for a day. You're not just sitting back hoping. You're not just sitting back trying a couple different things. You're going out there and saying, I'm going to make this happen. And from what I understand, obviously personal trainer is not where you stopped. Something happened where you eventually stumbled into a new business in the golf sector. Do you want to take us through how that happened?
Yeah, at a certain point, I got married, had 2 children, and one of my CEOs brought me on to start a what do you want to call it? A corporate fitness program in his company, and it was a startup. And probably the biggest regret I have in my life financially was my then wife had a really good job in the legal sector. She was like a legal, not a secretary, but like a legal assistant. And with the second biggest law firm in Portland, Oregon. And we had 2 kids. And when I got that corporate job with that client, I told her to quit her job. I pounded my chest like a hero and I said, quit your job. I'm good to go. We're doing great. Well, fast forward about 6 months, he shut the business down. It was a startup. He had sold his previous company for $85 million and then started another company. That's when I met him. And so he hired me as his personal trainer, but then said, why don't you do, my engineers are stressed out. Why don't you come on in, put together a program and quote me. And back then it was a really large account. It was like a $6,500 a month account. And my then wife was making probably $3,500 a month. Right. And so I'm like, we're good to go. Well, all of a sudden his company shut down. He was in trouble. And my revenues fluctuated $11,000 overnight.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh crap, I got an at-home wife, 2 young children staring at me. And they're like, what are you going to do now? And I had picked up the game of golf and become rabid at it. Like I studied it, my biomechanics, and I was playing, hitting balls.
Why am I not surprised that you went all in and figured out golf?
Yeah, I was hitting balls 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. And so I met a guy that had launched the world's first fitness membership site. Now, he launched this back in 1997. I'll never forget it. I met him in 2000. And this kid was 23 years old and was doing 2.6 million a year with his at-home online fitness company. He had an email list of 600,000 people. And now there's, online fitness is millions of them. He truly was the first. And he was from, ironically, Portland, Oregon. And I said, okay, I got to meet this guy. I got to go meet this guy. And I met him. And I said, and he was a trainer, right? But then he went into this online fitness world. And I go, I want to do what you do, right? Here we go again, like Groundhog Day. And he goes, okay, well, I don't want you to be my competitor, but what's your passion? And I go, well, God, fitness. Or golf, golf. And he goes, no, wait a minute. Okay. Could you do golf fitness? And I go, oh, 100%. And he goes, well,
so wait, what is golf fitness? How would you describe that?
Well, flip it the other way. It's fitness for golfers, right? It's helping golfers become more flexible, stronger, specific to the swing. Right. It's creating exercises that are specific to the golf swing. And there goes my biomechanic brain again. So I created all these exercises that were specific to the golf swing.
Yep.
And he said he became a 50% partner So I took his model, launched the world's first golf fitness membership site in 2001. And because of his background, I took it to 7 figures in just over 2.5 years, bought him out, and built a very, very big business online. And that's how I kind of learned all my digital marketing. I was doing content marketing, video marketing, SEO, web design, all of that back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually preparing for this podcast. Because you and I have chatted, and I know you've told me the story about your golf, and I found your golf channel on YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is awesome. Like there's videos here from, 12, 13 years ago or longer. I see some from like 16 years, but you were doing stuff on YouTube that, is exactly what people preach now. Like you were doing very specific videos. Like I'm looking at one right here. Your top video had 2.1 million views, where you're specifically just showing people what to do with their right elbow
Right
as they
elbow.
swing.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah. But it's a very specific video. Here's what you do with your right elbow as you're swinging a golf club. Did it take you a while to kind of figure out what types of videos really play? Because that's a very specific video, right? Were you watching what other channels were doing? Were you testing? How did you kind of figure this out?
No, what I did is I used myself as a guinea pig. And I was taking some lessons. I flew all over the country and took golf lessons from some of the top pros all around. And what I didn't like about them was they were big name guys charging a lot of money. And my then wife was so awesome to let me go do it. I was flying off to Dallas, Texas. I flew off to Atlanta, Georgia, because I met these guys online. And these were instructors. I was the golf fitness guy, but they'd come across my stuff and said, they respected me immediately. And so I would fly across the country and take lessons, and they didn't get into it the way I felt like you could do it. And so I broke down these little elements of the golf swing, like the elbow. And then what I did
your
was
biomechanics again. Yeah.
Biomechanics. And then, but then at the end of that video, I would do a golf fitness exercise and tie it back to the mechanics. And nobody on YouTube was doing that. And people really were fascinated with that angle that I took of golf swing technique, and then I would tie an exercise into it, like a flexibility exercise. I would tie something into it, and the golfers were like, holy crap, this is amazing. And then I started piecing the whole entire swing together like that.
Wow. So again, you kind of fell into this, but then fell hard into it, right? Like you had no ambition coming out of college, university to be a golf fitness instructor. You weren't even sure what you were going to do. You kind of stumble into being a personal trainer. That leads you down one path. You then stumble into golf. That leads you then to discover this other guy, and you replicate his model. It's like these serendipitous happy accidents along the way. But you build up this business into a 7-figure business. You kind of crack the YouTube code. You buy him out. Then what happens?
Then we rode that business till 2008, and something bad in 2008 happened. I don't know if you remember that. It was very, very bad. The market crashed and and so my revenues went down about 80% within about a month. Because my market was the semi-retired to retired golfer, because they knew that their body was tight and broken, so they were seeking out what I offered. So they found out very quickly that what they were investing in something that really wasn't a necessity. And all of a sudden, 2008, the party was over. And I'm like, wow, okay, now my kids are probably like, I guess Taylor, my son was probably 8 or 9. My daughter was like 6 or 7. My wife was still at home. And they look back up to me. My children look up to me and they go, what are you going to do now?
Now what, Dad?
What's next on the list? And I thought, well, shoot, I know how to make a living on the internet. I've done that. I can prove that. And I thought, well, there's this thing called digital marketing agency, and businesses, they need help on the internet, because even back then, it was still new for a lot of blue collar service businesses. They didn't know what to do on the internet. And so I got on Twitter and I saw a gentleman on Twitter that was here in Scottsdale he worked with dentists. He was a dental consultant. And I'm like, dentist, I don't know, but let me go have coffee with this guy. And I reached out to him and he said, yeah, I'll give you 15 minutes. And so I met him for a coffee, and that 15 minutes turned into a 4-hour meeting. And at the end of the 4-hour meeting, you want to talk about timing. He said, I've been looking for a guy like you that knows the internet. I want to bring you in to help all of my clients.
Oh.
And he handed me 13 dental clients overnight.
So his business was, he specifically worked with dentists and was like a consultant, helped them grow their business. Is that what he
Inside
was
their
doing?
office. He did all the sort of like, he was a consultant for like the front desk people, the staff,
Right.
internal.
Operations. Right.
Yeah. So I came in very complimentary to what he did.
Gotcha.
Right. I would bring the new patients in, and it would help him retain his clients to have him longer, because I
Right.
was increasing the revenues of these dental offices
Right.
through my
So
marketing.
again, we've got this same pattern repeating itself. You had been out there setting the stage, trying stuff, testing stuff, learning stuff, increasing your luck surface area, and then you just happen to stumble across this guy from Twitter, have this chance encounter meeting with the guy, and next thing you know, he hires you to be the digital marketer to the dentists.
Correct.
Wow. So is that the dominate your market digital marketing pivot that you took at that point?
No, I did that. I worked with dentists exclusively for about 7 years. And then, it was time for a change for me. I got kind of tired of being in the same niche. And really, truly at that point, I think COVID hadn't hit yet, but the years had gone by. And so I made a pivot and launched a very, very boutique digital agency that was not specific to dentistry.
Okay.
And what I did was I brought on vendors that I had known, like that did SEO, that did web design, that did content marketing, and I basically oversaw the whole thing. It was my agency, and I would pay the vendors, and then I would take my cut. And so I ran that agency for several years. And then that's when I wrote The Dominate Your Market, because I'd spent the better part of 20 years, running multiple different businesses, all basically off of the internet. And so I built up all this knowledge of sort of business growth, revenue growth, and on the online digital side.
Wow, incredible. So you put out Dominate Your. So first of all, what made you decide, hey, I think I'm going to write a book? And then from your background, I'm assuming you dove in, learned everything about writing a book, talked to some authors. Like, how did that all come about?
It was interesting. I think I've read 1,000 books in my lifetime, and of the 1,000 books, probably 800 were personal development books, right? And probably the rest were sales, marketing, business books.
Right.
But it just was in my head, and I knew I needed to get it out. I just knew that. And I thought, well, if I write this book and I cover all the aspects of business growth that I know that have worked for me and my clients, maybe that'll be like sort of a business card on steroids, right? And so it was funny, because when I went to write it, I had no clue. And I interviewed a book writing coach. And this was a female lady. And she said, what's your goal with this book? And I said, well, I want to write it in 2 to 3 months. And she goes, what do you mean? What do you mean? Write it? What are you talking about? And I go, well, my goal is to have it on Amazon in 90 days. And she said, well, that's not going to happen. And I go, really? And she goes, no. You're going to have to iterate, and I'll work with you. And I go, well, how's that look? Well, my fee's $10,000, and I'll coach you. And I go, well, I'm writing it though. Yeah, but I'll coach you. I said, well, what do you mean coach me? I don't need coaching. Well, I brought her on. I negotiated like a $6,000 deal to have her look at my chapters. Right. But what happened was I wrote it in 45 days.
Wow.
So I wrote 1,000 words a day for 45 straight days, and did not look up from my computer for 45 straight days. And then she'd look at the chapter, tweak it a little tiny bit. And then I sought out people that did self-publishing and all of that, and came across a guy. He did the formatting, came across a person who did the cover. and it was selling on Amazon, I think on day 72.
Wow.
And she told me when I told her 90, she said, there's no way. I did ask her, I go, what's the time frame that you think? And she kind of said, well, the people I work with, probably a year. And I go, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
This thing's going to get done way quicker than that. And
Yeah.
I think it was on Amazon on day 72.
So obviously another pattern here. Somebody tells you can't do something. Oh yeah, let me show you. Right. Same thing when you blew your knee out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I think for a lot of people that have that sort of that pit bull mentality, they love when they hear no. They love when they hear, you can't do that, because I've lived my life. I've had a lot of people call me a rebel. Like, man, you live on your own terms, don't you? I go, yeah, I guess so. And, I've never really worried about what other people say or think. And I never took the corporate route. And, there's pros and cons to that, Dennis, as you know, as an entrepreneur,
Yes.
it looks like this.
Yeah.
And probably less than 1% of individuals can handle this.
Yeah.
Probably less than 1%. And if they've got financial commitments, family commitments, all of that, you're going to probably get a spouse that someday tell you, go get a real job.
Yeah.
It's time for you to go get a real job. And I am thankful that my wife throughout the years supported me 100%. She actually wrote the cover letter in my second book, literally wrote the letter, which was, I've had people from all over the world email me about that letter she wrote, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And she's your ex-wife at the time she's writing that for your book. Anybody watching this on YouTube can see Michael's 2 books behind him. So on top, you've got Dominate Your Market in yellow. Below that, you've got Atomic Actions in black. Also, anybody watching this on YouTube is probably going, what do you mean he's 60 years old? He looks like he's 40. Obviously, very dedicated to personal fitness.
Thank you.
But yeah, just having the visual of what we're talking about here and all those incredible things that you've done. But I have to say, yes, having the support of a partner
Massive.
it's everything. I mean, I've experienced the exact same thing with my wife when I was laid off from my corporate job. She was actually the one that encouraged me to start my own thing. She's the one that's been supporting me. It wouldn't have been able to do it without that. When there is that roller coaster ride of both emotions, you have somebody there to help cheer you on, support you. When you have that roller coaster ride of the financials, again, you have somebody else that you're going through it with and you're talking to it with. And if they've got that supportive, positive attitude, that changes everything. So we're both very, very blessed.
And I think that goes on both sides, the man supporting, the woman, she aspires to do whatever she wants to do. If you're a good partner in that relationship, you support them 100%. So it goes on both sides of that. I just happen to be in that situation where she was at home and she trusted me. She used to say that to me all the time. I trust you. I know you're going to get through this. And she probably said that 50 times in my lifetime. I trust you. I know we're going to get through this.
Right. Yeah, it's huge. So back to your story, we're up to the part of your digital marketing and your book, Dominate Your Market. You really, immersed yourself in that. You built an agency around it. Obviously, you did the niche digital marketing with the dentist first. You had all your own experience with the golf channel and building that all out. But eventually, you started to pivot away from the digital marketing and into the peak performance. How did that come about?
Yeah, I think it was just circling back around to when I was training these male CEOs in their homes. What I found fascinating back then was that these men, because that's who I worked with, and I'm most effective with men. It just masculinity to masculinity, I don't know what you want to call it.
Right. Yeah.
And it worked very well. But what I was fascinated by was these men were really successful in Portland, Oregon. Written up on the front page of the newspaper and all that. Sold company for 85 million, blah, 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 entrepreneur of the year, CEO of the year. But when I would meet them and go into their homes, these men were broken. They were mentally broken. They were physically broken. Relationships were broken. They were either divorced or their marriages were in just complete disaster, complete disaster. And back then I was probably 28, 29 years old. And when they'd shut their 12-foot solid wood door on their $5 million home, and I got inside those walls, I saw a different picture. And I was astounded by that, because I always say this, nobody knows what somebody's going through behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So on the public side, you've got to paint this rosy picture. And that's fast forward now, that's social media. That's social media, right? Most people on social media paint this picture that's not true. It's
the
not
highlight
true.
reel.
It's not real. So
Yeah.
because of that, I started, some of the people that were hiring me for the digital marketing near the end were men again. And I would have a man that read my book, Dominate Your Market. And it's written very aggressively. It's a very, very aggressive book. Chapter 1, don't bullshit yourself. That is literally the name of chapter 1. And it's all about your health, well-being, your mindset. So I put that in chapter 1, because if you don't have that first, you're not going to be successful running a company.
Right.
If
That's
you're
your
broken
foundation.
mentally and physically, right?
Yeah.
And so these men were reading the book, and I didn't know it at the time, but basically I wrote the book for that demographic and didn't know it. I didn't know it. And I would get men calling me up and doing a Zoom and holding the book up. And one gentleman here locally he said, we're talking because of this. And he held my book up. And I go, well, why specifically? And he goes, well, what I really liked about it was you were a no bullshit guy. You said it like it is with no fluff. And this particular man did triathlons. And he said, I love that you tied in the health and wellness and mindset with business growth all together. He said that I've never heard that before. And so that really allowed me to pivot and have people realize that I kind of cover those 3 pillars of mindset, health and well-being, and marketing, business growth, all together.
Yeah. So again, another kind of unintentional happy accident here. You write this book, Dominate Your Market, which is about digital marketing, but because it's unintentionally kind of written in this aggressive tone, it appeals to men. Because this first chapter is really about getting your house in order, all of a sudden you have all these people reaching out to you for that reason.
Right.
When did the light bulb go off going, okay, enough people are reaching out about this specifically. I need to start coaching and consulting people in this area?
Well, it's right away. Like, it's, when you're an entrepreneur, and Dennis, you know this. When you're an entrepreneur, you're always seeking opportunities. Your mind's open. I always tell people, don't live like this. Live like this. Like, open up your eyes, and there's opportunities everywhere. And as an entrepreneur, you've got to be on the lookout and be self-aware enough to when something gets presented to you, and that's why I wrote the book, Atomic Actions, is we all have thoughts, ideas, and opportunities that are presented to us every single day. But the majority of people let it pass by.
Absolutely.
And any one of those thoughts, ideas, or opportunities could change your life. Could literally change your life. And that's why I wrote the book Atomic Actions, is to really help people overcome all those obstacles of being decisive and taking action.
So I want to get your take on this, because I talk about this a lot. I talk about this in the newsletter. I talk about this in the podcast. I talk about this in my social media posts. You get a lot of people going, oh, that person got lucky. And when I dissect all these stories, yes, there's unexpected things that happen. Yes, there's unplanned things that maybe land in somebody's lap. But that person first had to be doing stuff to increase their luck surface area. First, you're getting out there. You're meeting people. You're trying things. You're doing things. And then it's everything you just talked about. Then you have to be open. You have to be aware. You have to be observing that these opportunities are coming my way. And I think what happens with a lot of people is they are so focused on, oh, I wrote my 20-page business plan. I just have to have my head down, focused, and that's it. Everything else is noise. And they're so focused on this plan. Well, first of all, most businesses fail. Even if you're an MBA graduate, it's very hard to just start a business, follow a plan, and it's going to be successful. If it was that easy, every entrepreneur would be a success. The reality is you have to be open. Have a plan, have something that, okay, with the best information that I have at the time, here's the direction I'm going to go, but I'm going to be aware. What other opportunities are coming my way? somebody lands in my lap who works specifically with dentists. That wasn't in my plan, but there's an amazing opportunity. So it's that awareness and that observation. But then you have to actually have the boldness to go capitalize on that opportunity as well. And I think those people that sit back and just go, oh, you got lucky, they at any point along the way could have had the same opportunities,
Yep.
but they ignored them or didn't even see them. Or they did see them, but they didn't have the boldness to capitalize on them. And it's those people that do all three. They set the stage, they increase their luck surface area,
Yep.
and then they see those opportunities and then they capitalize on them. That's really the difference. Those are those lucky people at the end of the day.
Well, you create your own luck, life is all about timing, and that could be meeting a significant other, to getting, the job of a lifetime, to traveling the world, it's all timing. And I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, that instant gratification, and you get on social media and some 22-year-old kid says, I make $200,000 a month, I travel the world, look at me, look at me, look at me. And people go, that's what I want. And, that's, call it the lazy pill. Give me the lazy pill. Give me a pill that I can just take, and I'm rich, successful, and I'm thin, I'm fit, and all these things. And that's just not, if Jeff Bezos, they laughed at him when he said he's going to sell books online. His boss said, probably not a good idea. And I mean, he's the richest man in the world now. So I think everybody has to live according to their values, vision, and purpose. Values, vision, and purpose. And I think more and more people are waking up to the job market, even as a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, is not secure. And I think people are now starting to simplify their life. I know I am. I'm right in the middle of selling my home to completely change my life, because at age 60, I don't need the big home anymore. I don't want the overhead. I don't want the complications anymore. And that's, even on LinkedIn, I've started to change how I write, and I'm writing more to that man above 50, because that demographic resonates with me. And I've gone through it. I know how lonely it feels. I know how stressed out you can be as a man, because, our generation, we were brought up, you're defined by your success. You wear that badge of success. That's how you get the woman. That's how you show other men that you're impressive, is that you make X dollars a year, you drive the car, you have the home, and then you get the beautiful wife. That's all changed, right? We know that's not the case anymore. But for some of us, it's built in us. It's hard to get rid of it. And I've really learned that I want experiences over things.
Yes.
I want experiences over things. And that doesn't require lots of money. And it allows me to live a life where I can travel the world, still do what I want to do, coaching men off of video calls, and really trying to help men get clarity on what do they want for the rest of their life. Because the question I will tell you is that anybody watching this should ask this question right here. So I'm 60 and I plan on working until I'm 80, and hopefully I'll live to 100. We'll see. That's the goal.
So far, so good.
Well, so far, so good. Right. But I asked myself, what do I want to do for the next 20 years? What will make me happy when I wake up every day for the next 20 years? And it just circles back around to working with men that are going through what I've gone through, the roller coaster, the emotions, divorce, financials up and down, and still going and still grinding and getting after it. That's what I want to help men get through it, because I've done it myself.
Yeah. I love the fact that you brought this up, because it's everywhere. It's in our face, right? Especially on social media. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Here's the plan you're supposed to follow. Here's all the check marks you're supposed to check off. That's how you live a happy, successful life. Only it isn't. At the end of the day, those are just check marks. And check, you got it. Then what? Now you're just looking to get the next check mark, and you're constantly chasing life. And my wife and I went through a very similar transition to what you're talking about a few years ago, where we're like, no, that's not what we want. That's not happiness to us. We've downsized, we've simplified our life.
Awesome.
We just enjoy the simpleness now, the simple things, and we're not chasing anymore. So I love that you're in that same spot and you're helping other people get there as well. I want to do something now. So this is the part of the podcast where we've dissected your story. It fits in like with all the different other happy accident stories out there. You follow the same kind of 3-step act, in your case, multiple times. You're out there increasing your luck surface area. An unexpected opportunity lands in your lap. You recognize it, you capitalize on it. In your case, it's rinse and repeat several times. And twice you've scaled it to 7-figure businesses. What I want to do now, though, is just kind of play the what if game, because there's so many different things that happened that if you had done something a little bit differently, it could have been a completely different life for you, right? Like, what if you didn't have that older brother that was this amazing track star, and it didn't cause you to have this personality to always trying to keep up with him? That could have been a completely different trajectory for your life.
Yep.
Right? Like,
For sure.
it could have been a whole different Michael Pedersen sitting here right now. What if you hadn't have, accidentally talked to that guy on Twitter who was, the dentist guy? Never would have really went into that whole digital marketing. What if you hadn't have kind of stumbled across the whole golf digital thing? Like, all of these things were unplanned and but have completely shaped who you are and your life and where you are right now. So do you ever sit back and kind of go like, man, how did this happen?
I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. I mean, and that's one thing I write about in the end of my book, this last book, Atomic Actions. I call it the deathbed of regrets. Your deathbed of regrets. And when you're in the moment and you've got an opportunity, an idea, or a thought, and on the surface, it might look pretty interesting to you, but then you just let it go. You got to pause yourself right there and go, will I regret letting this pass me by? And not even taking a little action. I call them, in my book, I call it micro actions.
Right.
These consistent micro actions that create a snowball effect. And what if you just did one thing, like, you get it, like me, I got on Twitter and I saw this guy and I'm like, I don't know. He's in Scottsdale. He's about 15 minutes away from me. Let me send him a message, And so I think a lot of people need to stop and ask yourself, will I regret this if I don't do anything?
Yeah.
And because the worst feeling in the world, in my opinion, would be to be on your deathbed. And they've interviewed people. You can go on YouTube. They're all over the place. They got interviewed on their deathbed. And a lot of them said, I wish I would have lived the life I wanted to live. I wish I would have, quit my job earlier because I didn't enjoy it. The love of my life when I was a teenager, I wish I would have reached back out to them, things like that. And I look at that now at 60, I'm flying through life, and I refuse to live a life where I don't at least take a little action on every one of my thoughts that I feel have legitimacy. I refuse. It's going to happen. I'm going to do something, whether it's an email to somebody, whether it's a phone call. I'm going to do something. If I get a thought or an idea that I think, boy, that's pretty interesting, I'm going to reach out to that person, no doubt.
Yeah. We are so aligned on that. In fact, my personal motto over the last few years has become, make my future self proud and solve for regret. If this is something that my future self would regret it if I didn't do it, I should do it. I owe it to my future self to do this. And it can't mean that you say yes to everything, but there's got to be, what are those things that are lighting your eyes up and you're like, man, my future self is going to regret it if I don't at least try this, right? So I love it. Okay, I want to do some fun things here with you now. I asked you to share a couple things with me ahead of the podcast. A couple of fun things that you've done, a couple of quotes that mean something to you. You jumped out of an airplane. You went skydiving in Thailand. Is that right?
No, skydiving was in, that was when I was training for track and field. After Oregon State, I was training with a bunch of pole vaulters doing the decathlon, and these guys were crazy psycho dudes. And they're like, we're going to go skydive. I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll have a good time with that. And they're like, no, you're coming with us. And I'm like, what? And we jumped out of an airplane 2,800 feet in the air. Not once, but we did it twice. And, the funny joke about that was when the flight, the parachute guy told me to step out on the wing. They open the door and you step out on the wing and you hold on to the side of the wing. And he said he was pounding, literally pounding on me to let go. He goes, you have no idea how hard I was hitting you to let go on the first one, because you let go and, you go. And I'm like, I'm going to die, man. Oh, here we go. And then the chute comes up and then we hit the ground. We not hit the ground. We land on the ground and then all the pole vaulters go, let's do it again. I'm like, and so we get the chute back on, we go back up, and we did it twice in one day. So that was a lot of fun, but that's just getting out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah. 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 I've thought about skydiving. I don't know. It sounds great, but I know when you get up there and the doors open, it's time to jump out. That's the moment of truth, right? So
it's
that's
scary,
a whole other
very
story.
scary.
Whole other story. Okay. So the other thing, which was Thailand, was you traveled there solo just recently, I believe, right?
Yep.
So what prompted that, and what was that like?
Well, through my whole marriage, we were raising kids, and we did do Maui, Hawaii 8 times. Why? We did the same place. We were just creatures of habit. But when I got divorced, I was meeting all these people that had traveled all over the place.
Right.
And it was embarrassing to me, right? Back then I got divorced at like 55 years of age. Probably 53. And I'd been nowhere other than Hawaii, right? And so I would, topic of conversations, hey, do you travel? I'm like, I want to. And I would say, where have you been? Oh, I've been to China, Paris, Italy, Greece, all this stuff. And they would turn to me and go, where you been? I go, Maui 8 times. and that answer got old to me. And I had this vision that international travel was really expensive because I just didn't know. And I have a good buddy of mine that I've known for 30 years, was in the fitness business, who was posting on Facebook, Thailand all the time. And I reached out to him after 30 years. And here's one thing I want the listeners to understand. If they're in their 30s or 40s, your life is going to fly by. Be ready for that, because I'm 60 now. And the thought of not having been in touch with my friend for 30 years blows me away. Yeah. But I reached out to him and I said, what's this Thailand thing? He goes, well, I started going 17 years ago and I married a Thai woman. I go, you married a Thai woman? Holy crap, geez, you went all in. And I go, how expensive is it? And he broke it down to me, and it was way less than I thought. And within 4 months, I was on an airplane to Thailand.
Wow.
So I was
your
like,
first
okay, I'm going
time
to Thailand.
ever traveling internationally was solo at the age of 60. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, and then finally, your favorite quote. So I'm going to give a bit of background here. It's a quote from a guy named David Goggins. And if the audience aren't familiar, he's a retired United States Navy SEAL. He's also an ultra athlete, right? Ultra marathon, long distance cyclist, triathlete, public speaker. He's written some books. The quote, actually, I'll let you give the quote, and then why does it mean so much to you?
David Goggins is a badass. I mean, that guy is just a badass. But the quote is, the most important conversations you'll ever have are the ones you'll have with yourself. And we all have self-talk all day, every day. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of that self-talk is negative. It's limiting beliefs, it's barriers, it's I can't do this, I wish I could do that, I should do this, I hope to do that. There's 6 words that I wish we could banish from the dictionary. Wish, could, should, try, and hope. I hate now hope. A lot of people say, no, wait a minute, hope's a good word. Well, it's in the context that I'll explain the context. Well, I hope this works for me. Right. That's the context. Now, having hope in life and things, totally different. But if you have that mindset of I hope this works, you're not committed. You're not all in. And it's probably not going to work if you have that phrase. So for me, that self-talk, you've got to be aware of what you're feeding your brain and realize that there's a little human that's probably on your shoulder inside your head that's chirping at you and saying all these things. You can't do this. Nope, don't do that. And we've got to ignore that voice and do it anyways. Yeah,
love it. Yeah, that's a inspiring quote for sure. And obviously, David Goggins would resonate with you with his athletic background. Michael, where can people best connect with you?
LinkedIn. I spend a fair bit of time on LinkedIn. Michael Pedersen, spelled Pedersen. Pedersen, spelled a little different. And my website, my peak performance coaching website is mikepedersen.com. And that's Mike, Pedersen.com. And yeah, just reach out to me. We can have a 15-minute call, chat about what you want out of life, see if it's a good fit to work together, and we can explore what that looks like.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes. Mike, thank you so much for being a guest on the Happy Accidents podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do. But make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends.